Farzana Majeed is a highly qualified Pakistani graduate, but for the last 4 years she's put normal life on hold while she fights to get information about her missing brother. She comes from the province of Balochistan, which has seen several insurgencies against the central Pakistani government since partition in 1947. Human rights campaigners say that hundreds of Baloch activists have been abducted by the Pakistani authorities over the years. Meanwhile, the army, which controls large parts of the province, says it's fighting for the territorial integrity of Pakistan. Farzana's younger brother Zakir went missing in 2009 when he was 24. Since then, Farzana's life has been spent living in protest camps, turning up for court hearings and speaking at political rallies. Now she and 19 other relatives of the disappeared are on a 750-kilometre protest march from the provincial capital Quetta to Karachi. When I spoke to Farzana through a translator, she told me what her brother was doing before he disappeared.
My brother was basically raising awareness about Baloch students and problems experienced by nationalists. People were disappearing and then their dead bodies were turning up. So my brother was raising awareness about that. He didn't do anything wrong.
So what do you remember about the last time you saw your brother before he went missing?
I saw him at the university at a seminar. He was delivering a speech as part of his political activity. After that, he was disappeared.
How did you find out that he was missing?
My brother was traveling from the town of Mastoon to another town with two of his friends. On the road, some people carrying the ID cards of a security agency made them stop and arrested all three of them. Later, the two friends were released. But my brother, who was quite well known through the local media, remained under arrest. His friends contacted the Baloch Students' Organization to tell them what had happened. Then the media picked up the story and I found out through a local news channel.
That must have been very shocking for you. What were your emotions when you heard that on the news?
It was a disaster. All hell broke loose over my head. At first I kept the news from my mother, but then the next day I thought that I should break it to her. My mother was shocked, of course. She was very worried. At first, she refused to believe it, but I made her understand that he had been abducted. Then I said, it will be fine, it will be okay. And from that day on, I have never stopped reassuring her that one day my brother will return and he will be safe.
I presume that this was particularly worrying news because he's not the only person to have disappeared. Have there been many other cases of people who have just been taken off the street and then never been seen again?
My brother was not alone, and there were many other people who were abducted but then later released. Initially, it was not the policy to kill detainees and dump their bodies, but now it seems that a lot of bodies are being dumped. People are picked up, then a few weeks or a few months or a few years later, their bodies are found in random places. My issue is that my brother has done nothing wrong. And if he had done something wrong against the state, it's the state which has the institutions to deal with him. And the state which should fulfill its responsibility and bring the matter to court. Then the court can decide if my brother has done something wrong and if he should be punished. If not, he should be returned to his family. A responsible state does not simply pick up its citizens, then dump their dead bodies.
Have you had any news at all, any communication from him since he was picked up?
I found out about my brother through Baloch activists who were abducted but later released. They told us that they have seen my brother and many others in the detention centers where they were held. That's the only information we have. There has been no direct communication from Zakir.
I had heard that he had sent you the buttons from his shirt to prove that he was still alive. Is that true?
No, what he sent was his prayer beads, which he gave to one of his friends who was released, Yahya Jamaldini, and that friend brought them to us.
Why do you think that some people have been released and yet your brother is still in captivity?
The people who were released went back to work at the same political organizations as soon as they were freed. So maybe the people holding Zahir thought that if they released him, he too would go back to the same activities. It could have been that fear that stopped them. But this is not the right policy. They should not detain people without any legal proceedings.
And as for your life, for the last 4 years, really, you've had to put your life on hold to campaign, to try to find out where your brother is. Has it been very difficult for you to give up your thoughts of a career and to focus on your campaigning?
It is very tough. Of course it is tough. The state has to look at this because it's not just keeping my brother in custody. It is destroying the life of his mother, myself and many others. It's not just one person's life which is destroyed. It's the life of the whole family. The important point here is that if all these people's lives are destroyed and we are being pushed to the wall, do you expect us to just forget about all this suffering? I don't think so. And that is the problem, that all this suffering and hardship is increasing the determination of the people to get independence from Pakistan.
Now, you're involved in this 750-kilometre protest march to Karachi, and you're with 19 other relatives of disappeared people. Tell me, how is the march going? Because you're going through some of the most difficult terrain in Pakistan, aren't you?
It is very hard and painful for us to walk through this harsh terrain. A lot of us have blisters and other problems. But we are writing the history of Baloch resistance. We are not worried about the hunger and the pain and the suffering. We are doing it for the whole nation, and we will achieve this.
You've taken part in many protests before. Do you think that this one is likely to be more successful in getting your brother released?
Every day when I come out of my house, and every protest I take part in, and every move I make, I do it in the hope that someone, somewhere will take notice and maybe have the heart to do something about releasing my brother. Or maybe someone could understand our plight and understand what we are going through and why we are so desperate.
Farzana, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us today.
Thank you.
My colleague from BBC Urdu, Tahir Imran, is on the line. Tahir, I wonder if you can just give us some of the context to this struggle that's going on in Balochistan. What is the history of it?
Matthew, Balochistan is Pakistan's largest province, and it has a huge reservoir of natural resources, especially natural gas. It was run by tribal elders, tribal leaders. The problem started in 1970s when the then Prime Minister, that was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who decided to take military action against some Sardars to basically create space for the oil and gas exploration and some other issues as well. But it came to a very tough time when Musharraf was the president, the military dictator. During his time, a lot of people basically went outside the cities and into the mountains, and the proper Baloch insurgency started, and then the military started its initiatives. This abduction system started to develop. Initially, as Farzana was saying, that people used to be abducted and released after torture or after something, but very recently their dead bodies basically are left on the streets. Initially, the dead bodies used to be dumped in Balochistan itself. But now you can see that these are being dumped into Karachi because Karachi also has a big Baloch population.
What does the government say when they're challenged about these abductions and these dead bodies?
Matthew, this is a very complex, very strange thing. Media cannot independently go to Balochistan or these areas because if they report against the Baloch resistance movement, they are threatened by liberation fighters. And if they report against the military or something, so they have threats from the military and the government's side. So we cannot verify who is doing that and how it is being done. And the government side simply says that they are trying to resolve this issue. The Chief Justice of Pakistan, who is very active, he has taken the matter to the highest level. He has ordered the military, he has ordered the police, he has called everyone to the court. But it seems to go nowhere.
The BBC's Tahir Imran talking to me from Islamabad. And before that, you heard Farzana Majeed speaking to me from the roadside on her protest march. You're listening to Outlook from the BBC World Service. If you want to get in touch, the email address is outlook@bbc.com, or you can post messages on our Facebook page. Search for BBC Outlook.